Well, stop me if you've heard this before, but there is yet another layer, another chapter to the ongoing Diontae Johnson saga in Baltimore. And we've got all that and more to discuss throughout the course of today's live stream. Welcome inside the channel. I'm Bobby Trosset. And as always, this is where I bring you Baltimore sports and beyond. It is brought to you today by Primary Residential Mortgage. More on them in just a bit. What do I mean specifically by this new layer, this new chapter? Well, the Ravens just tweeted this out within the last hour or so as John Harbaugh was sitting down for his Monday weekly press conference. Here's the quote and the statement from the team. We have mutually agreed with Diontae Johnson to excuse him from team activities this week. Well, it's Steelers week, of course, and that is his former team. It's also the week that he technically was supposed to have been available and have fulfilled his one-game suspension, which sidelined him from last week's practices and, of course, sidelined him from yesterday's game in the Meadowlands against the New York Giants. What's even more interesting is what changed between now and yesterday pregame when Mike Garafolo of NFL Network had this to say about the current, at that point, status of the situation between the two parties.
Here at MetLife Stadium, where Tommy DeVito will play today for the Giants, Diontae Johnson will not play for the Ravens, serving that one-game suspension for a conduct detrimental to the team after the team said he refused to go into the game against the Eagles. But this is not like the Devondre Campbell situation with the 49ers from a couple of days ago. The hope is that Johnson, who is expected to return to the building on Monday, will find his way back into the good graces of this team and be a key contributing factor for them down the stretch. He only has one catch since they acquired him in a trade, and they're hopeful that that will change down the stretch. No reason to believe at this point that he won't suit up for the team again.
Okay, so again, that was pregame on Sunday prior to the Giants game from Mike Garafolo, saying that this is not like the Devondre Campbell situation in San Francisco. By the way, he was just suspended 3 games. They're attempting to recoup, I think, a portion of the $3+ million signing bonus that they gave Campbell to come to San Francisco this season. And we all remember on Thursday Night Football last week that he refused to enter the game when his number was called, much like Diontae did during the Philadelphia game. So then Mike goes on to say the hope is that Johnson, who is expected to return the building today, which is not happening and did not happen, will find his way back into the good graces of this team and be a key contributing factor for them down the stretch. No reason to believe at this point that he won't suit up for the team again. Again, that was prior to this, the statement that I just read off the top. We have mutually agreed with Diontae Johnson to excuse him from team activities this week. You already know John Harbaugh was in no mood to talk about it, but he had to. The team literally released the statement as he was sitting down for his press conference. So, of course, right off the top, he fielded 2 questions.
Really, to be honest with you, and all I'm really thinking about right now is Pittsburgh and getting our team ready for Pittsburgh. So he won't be here this week, and next week will take care of itself.
John, I guess just one quick follow-up on that. I mean, why did you guys decide to handle it that way and not simply release it?
I'm really interested in Pittsburgh Steelers, to be honest with you. I know you guys want to hear the story. There's a lot of moving parts. There are reasons for doing things that are front office type reasons, Do I want to sit here and get into all the different calculations that Eric makes? I really don't. I want to think about Pittsburgh and our team getting ready for Pittsburgh and the guys who are going to be here playing against Pittsburgh. That's my focus, 100%.
So 2 questions, 2 answers, 2 non-answers in a sense, and they are on to Pittsburgh. Well, guess what? Diontae should be on to Pittsburgh as well. This is his former team, and this is a team that the Ravens are trying to split their season series with. This is a team that's their most bitter rival and that's given Lamar Jackson the biggest headache throughout his 7 years in this league. And this is a team that currently stands in the way of an AFC North title if you are Baltimore. the Ravens still very much control their own destiny. If you win this head-to-head matchup coming up on Saturday, not only do you extend your chances of winning the division, but you keep Pittsburgh away from doing so. So if the Ravens win on Saturday, that takes Pittsburgh's chances away, at least from winning the division for another week. And we know the Steelers and their schedule down the stretch is no joke. They just lost to Philadelphia yesterday, and they still have Cincinnati and Kansas City on the schedule on top of Baltimore. So that's what's coming up. And you would have hoped prior to the deadline last month that a guy like Diontae Johnson would at least be an option for you to serve as depth or to serve as a wide receiver 3 behind Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. That's not going to happen. And I don't know if he's ever going to play again for the Ravens, to be honest with you. And I'll tell you why in just a second. But as Sarah noted on X here a short while ago, again, Diontae is no longer suspended, but he's yet to have been cut. The team did announce, as I just mentioned, that the two sides have, quote, mutually agreed to excuse him from team activities this week leading into week 16 against the Steelers. And Harbs pointed everything to that matchup away from these questions. Quote, what I foresee, really, to be honest with you, and all I'm really thinking about right now is Pittsburgh. So he won't be here this week, and next week will take care of itself. And when asked to follow up on why they didn't just release him, he said, quote, I'm really interested in the Pittsburgh Steelers, to be honest with you. I know you guys want to hear the story. There are a lot of moving parts. There are reasons for doing things that are front office type reasons. Do I want to sit here and get into all the different calculations that Eric makes? I really don't. I want to think about Pittsburgh and the guys who are going to be here playing against Pittsburgh. That's my focus 100%. So you're probably wondering, well, why the hell haven't they released him yet? Why haven't they suspended him again or on top of the 1-game suspension, kind of like Devondre Campbell just got? Again, that's a 3-game suspension for also refusing to go into the game for San Francisco last week. Well, Jeff Zaribek was asked that exact question. Why keep him? And in this case, Swam Dog here at Danny D15 _ on X says, just play Tez Walker. Now, for the record, I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of Devontae down the stretch. It was a great opportunity for him yesterday, and he made the most of that opportunity. But I wouldn't rush to judgment here. I wouldn't get too carried away in terms of what Devontae Walker's role will be. Remember, this is a player who had been inactive 8 games total prior to yesterday, week 15. And Jeff notes and responds to Danny and says, look, either they don't want to give him the satisfaction of letting him go so he can sign where he wants to go to. Kind of like you get the sense that San Francisco is trying to teach Devondre Campbell a lesson as well in that regard. Or they don't want to set the precedent that if a player complains, they'll let them go for nothing. So make no mistake about it. I feel fairly confident here that Diontae Johnson has played his last snap, his last down as a Raven. There weren't many of them, by the way. And I think bigger picture now, I see some of you saying free Diontae. Taurus, free Diontae. What kind of smoke is that? Chris, he's in timeout. You're damn right he's in timeout. He has come to Baltimore, and all he's become is a headache. We can argue whether he has or hasn't been a distraction, and that's probably a conversation for another time. The reality is the Ravens gave very little up investment-wise, draft compensation-wise, to bring Diontae to Baltimore. And so there was very little risk. But what you're seeing is the reality is there's been very little reward as a result. Slim to none. Slim to no reward, matter of fact. He's 1 for 5 so far when Lamar targets him. He's caused a headache. He's been a problem. And I think a lot of people will go back and look at how his time in Pittsburgh ended. We'll look at how he handled some of his media obligations during his brief stint with Carolina earlier this year. And dare I say, you can kind of wave the finger and point the finger at him when it comes to diva, when it comes to disruptive to a locker room. And while the Ravens are saying and doing all the right things, particularly his teammates, Rashad and Zay and Lamar, when asked about it at the podium, this is clearly a situation that I don't know. It doesn't look to be solvable. I mean, if it's not solvable and this player can't help the Ravens get where they want to go, then there's really no reason in continuing this song and dance. It has become a saga. It may not be getting the national publicity that you might think or feel like it should because of the fact that you're in on it or you're a diehard fan or it's all that we've been talking about in recent weeks. But make no mistake about it, this is a total miss. I'm not saying it's a miss from the organization because they haven't invested anything in him. I'm saying it's a miss from the organization thinking that this would be a good fit. This is not a good fit. And I think the end of his time in Pittsburgh wasn't a good fit. The end of his time in Carolina, for a number of reasons, clearly wasn't a good fit. And that's where things currently stand between number 18 and Baltimore, who, again, if you're just tuning in, has been excused. And apparently it was a mutual agreement to excuse him from team activities this week in what is a big week for the team if they have AFC North aspirations. If they have aspirations of trying to chip away at what's become kryptonite in a sense, and that is performing successfully and efficiently against the Pittsburgh Steelers throughout the Lamar Jackson era. This is a big week. The AFC North title and that division is very much still up for grabs. And everything is still within the Ravens' control. You win out over the next 3 weeks, which I find to be unlikely. I think they drop one of the next two. And my guess is it's going to be Christmas Day in Houston on a short week. That would be my guess. I predicted them to go 3-1 out of the bye. Already off to a 1-0 start. Obviously, that's the least surprising thing. But those are my thoughts. I think they lose one of the next two. It ends up becoming a tiebreaker of the division for the division, which will ultimately come down to division record. And then if it's still tied there, it'll move to conference record. And that's where Pittsburgh has the advantage over Baltimore. And do not be surprised if in a few weeks from now, we're looking back at that week 2 loss to Vegas and that week 8 loss to Cleveland as games that you may not have known it then, but certainly you know now that they're coming to be pretty significant in how this AFC playoff picture shapes out and obviously how this division is ultimately decided.